All right, so I want to do my update as usual, as well as talk about some other stuff, give an update on the other big situation that's still kind of going on. So anyway, let's get right into it. Alberta had 187 new cases yesterday, which is I think the third or fourth most we've had. But keep in mind, I think yesterday we were at around 104, 105,000 tests. So we're testing an incredibly high amount of people every day. And we've seen the studies, I think out of Spain, that said that the amount of people they estimate to be infected, because there's a lot of people that are asymptomatic that don't even go get tested. There's a lot of people that have mild symptoms that don't get tested. They believe that the amount of people infected is actually quite a bit higher than they originally thought, which goes to show that the virus isn't as bad. I mean, it spreads faster than we think, but it's not nearly as deadly as we think. So that's another thing to point out too, is that you have to take all these numbers with a grain of salt because there's a lot of people that don't get tested. And the other problem too is that especially in the States, I'm not sure about Canada, but there's a lot of doctors that have reported that, and there's a lot of cases that go to show that people either didn't die, they die with COVID, not from COVID. Basically, is the whole situation going on. So you have to take the numbers at a grain of salt. I've seen in Alberta, over 500 of the cases have came from people that work at the one meat plant. About 25 to 30 of the dead is from one nursing home. So in reality, this isn't a widespread thing. It's something that definitely affects pockets. But like I keep pointing out too, I've seen in Quebec too, I think the majority of their cases are from nursing homes. I think I've seen that on CBC actually. And then Ontario, they got about 30 deaths from the one nursing home, I think over 30 now. So these are coming from very specific areas. Like I keep mentioning, they're almost always older people. I think in Quebec, of their cases, they don't have anybody who's died under the age of 30, and only about 4 or 5 people that have died under the age of 50. So like I keep saying, there's absolutely no reason that younger people can't, go back to work and set things in motion too. I heard today there's reports that Saskatchewan's coming up with a plan to reopen things. I really don't know why Alberta hasn't. To me, it makes absolutely no sense, that especially considering that Calgary has more than two-thirds of our cases. Why does Edmonton, with 5 times less cases than Calgary, why can't we open up, or at least moderately open up, everywhere but the Calgary area? To me, that makes absolutely no sense. And the big problem with this is that I think politicians are very scared when it comes to reopening things. Number one, because they've been fed this propaganda that it's a lot worse than it actually is. And number two is that there's going to be a second wave no matter what. And there may even be a third wave. And if they open things back up and the second wave inevitably hits, it probably won't hit till next fall or winter. But even if they open it up and the amount of cases stays relatively steady, they're going to receive flack and pushback. And I mean, to me, that's stupid. But again, it's the damned if you do, damned if you don't scenario. The problem, like I keep pointing out, is that we're losing more by keeping things closed and than by not opening things back up. Yes, if we open things back up, we're still going to have issues. There's still going to be people that get it are going to die, but we at least have a decent chance at avoiding a mass recession. So anyway, I just wanted to bring that up. Any updates on the terrible situation that went on in Nova Scotia over the weekend? There isn't really a major update. Yesterday it came out that the shooter had a criminal record, but again, I've heard conflicting reports that it was expunged, or whatever the official term for that is. That when you're pardoned, I'm not sure, but if he had the criminal record, he shouldn't have been able to get a firearms license, which is more than likely why the government is not as talkative about the whole gun control thing as one would believe. And I heard reports that when he killed the one cop, he stole her gun. Again, that's just a rumor that I heard, but that would be another reason to point towards the reason why they're not, going off on gun control. Um, and again, I didn't want to have to politicize this, but again, the minute you again, it's the don't throw the first punch, but if the other person throws the first punch, the fight is on. And the minute there, you have all these gun control groups that are all hot and bothered. You have all these people on social media that have literally no idea at all what they're talking about, that are all, gun control now, all this kind of BS. And again, like I say, it would be nice if we could just not politicize it, but the minute that you politicize it, I'm not just going to sit there and pretend that you didn't, because a gun ban will do absolutely nothing. It's completely unnecessary. It will affect the lives of a lot of people. And again, it doesn't do anything. It doesn't do anything. We know it doesn't do anything. I've made plenty of videos about it, and I could take a few minutes and easily, go to show it that um, Canada's murder rate was very, very lightly affected by our gun ban, and we're worldwide there was a trend down in gun violence to begin with, or in violence in general. And I mean, look at the states too. The amount of guns they have there is more than doubled in the last 25 years, and the murder rate's been cut in half. How does that point towards more gun control or less guns equaling more less crime? It's the opposite, if anything. You've seen the John Lott has done plenty of research on this too. That concealed carry lowers crime, not by much, but it lowers crime. Legal gun owners are less likely than cops to commit crimes. Again, so if you support disarming legal gun owners, then you should support disarming cops. But again, no one's willing to argue that. And I wanted to point this out, not to be to be too mean or anything, but this guy, obviously terrible situation. His brother was killed by the gunman. Again, don't want to mention his name. But I wanted to point out that in Canada, if we had concealed carry laws, if we weren't so strict with our gun laws, and this guy had a gun with him, well, he more than likely could have saved his brother's life, or at least had a fighting chance. And they said that he had to go hide in the woods and just hope and pray that the cops show up to save his life. Like, is That's not the world that I want to live in. I don't want to live in the world to where when some madman is going on a rampage, that I have to go hide in the woods and hope and pray that the cops show up. And even if the cops show up, they still might not do anything. I'd rather be able to be responsible for my own protection. So I just wanted to point that out. And again, I don't mean it as a cold-hearted approach. I'm just using it as an example to point it out to me, it makes no sense that people would rather be victims than, victors, or to be able to actually defend themselves. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Um, and then this is related to it. This is from Mark Friesen. Now he's responding to an article. And again, this is just another reason why I'm not staying quiet on the whole issue. Um, this is from the Saskatchewan Herald. They go on to say at least 17 dead after right wing Caucasian terror rampage in Nova Scotia. So they have to add in the whole race thing. They have to add in the right wing when there's literally no evidence of it. At least at this point, no evidence that he was some big right winger, conservative or Trump supporter, any of that kind of stuff. And the fact that they're super silent on the whole political leaning, on the whole, gun control leaning, is that he more than likely wasn't. I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if he was a conservative, but I think it'd be a lot more surprised um, if he was if he legally owned the gun. And even if he did legally own the gun, he still committed more crimes than you can count to commit these crimes. So to me, it makes no sense too. And I just wanted to point out too that this stuff is just sheer propaganda too. Like, this is the reason why there's such a political divide out there, and this is the reason why I'm not staying silent on this issue. Is that if we could just, like I say, if we could have just mourned the terrible tragedy that it was, and not politicized it, I would have stayed quiet. I would have acknowledged, the terrible tragedy that it is, and it obviously definitely is. A lot of people lost their lives for no good reason. They were completely innocent. And but yet you have this kind of stuff. Like, this is why that things are so bad out there. First of all, why do we have to mention the person's race? Whites are much less likely to commit crimes than almost any other race that exists aside from Asians. Again, so the idea of the white mass shooter, it's actually whites are actually less likely. Again, the main reason why is that whenever The mass shootings happen from a white guy. They're always all over the news. The black mass shootings tend to be more gang related, drug related, that kind of stuff. So again, not really all over the news. Um, and again, too, we don't know his political persuasion. And the fact that we don't know his political persuasion and they just had to add that in just goes to show that they don't actually have a good argument against the right, too. They don't have a good argument. And I'm going to get to that soon here. Um, not all, again, this is from Maxime Bernier. So a 17-year-old kid was fined for playing basketball by himself. And then Maxime Bernier says, not all public servants are there to serve and protect us. Many are just goons taking advantage of the current crisis to indulge in their power trip. Retweet to send them a message to back off. And again, this is from in Ottawa. And again, this is crazy. Like, it makes no sense. Like, we can go, we can go to Walmart, we can go to Superstore, and with hundreds of people inside, and be perfectly fine. But yet we can't play basketball on our own alone. Like, and we can't go for walks in the woods. We can't sit on a park bench. Like, what kind of insanity is this out there? And again, this clearly isn't as big of an issue as we think. This isn't Black Plague. Like, why are we treating it like this? But again, you have all the people that love, authoritarian totalitarianism, namely on the left, that are the ones, pretty much defending it too. And the other thing too is that we're currently a pretty socialist country right now. Like, we got a de facto UBI, and at least for some people, in the whole CERB thing, the government has the power to nationalize a lot of industries. So again, the main reason why a lot of these lefties like it is that we're one step closer to socialism. So if we're one step closer to socialism, they don't care what goes on to get to that point. They'll support it. So again, this kind of stuff is crazy. And again, this should be bipartisan. Like, we all should be able to be up in arms about this kind of stuff. But because it's authoritarian, the left really seems to like it. And again, to be fair, people on the right tend to have a lack of balls when it comes to calling this kind of stuff out. The one thing that the left definitely does have on the right is that they're very collectivist, and that if one of their own is in need, they'll go out and help them. If someone on the right is getting attacked on social media, or this kind of stuff going on, people are silent. So it's terrible, but it is what it is. This is from Juanita Broderick, and she's quoting the True Pundit. So basically, this whole forced vaccine stuff is really crazy. And again, you have a lot of these lefties that hate corporate greed, that hate corporate monopolies and all this kind of stuff, and yet they support forced vaccination. Now, you don't realize that the minute a company can, I mean, technically you are kind of forced. I mean, not completely, but a lot of jobs you can't have, all that kind of stuff. You can't travel to certain places without it. But the minute that we're forced to get this kind of stuff, and I mean literally forced, like, you can't get a driver's license, you can't travel, you can't get a gym membership, you can't get anything pretty much without being forced to do this kind of stuff. There's people out there that have a massive profit incentive. The companies that if vaccines become forced, and I mean 100% forced, not like 99% forced like they are right now, to where they just make your life so miserable and inconvenient that you basically just give in and do it. The minute that you're legally required to do it, which is what most people nowadays are pushing for, namely Justin Trudeau, Bill Gates, all these kind of people, that company will be the most profitable company in the world. That will be the first $1 trillion company. The top people in that companies probably will be the first trillionaires, because the problem with vaccine companies is that they don't have liability. So regardless, if they create a defective product that kills people, they are exempt. They are immune from liability, which means they could create a product that kills 1 million people, and they wouldn't have to pay out they wouldn't have to pay out $1 in fines, in lawsuits, in anything. And that just goes to show that anybody who thinks vaccines are 100% safe and effective is a complete idiot. A complete idiot. Because if they're 100% safe and effective, then why did vaccine companies push for immunity from all lawsuits? That makes absolutely no sense. If you know they're 100% safe and effective, then you wouldn't spend insane amounts of time and money lobbying the government to pass a law that exempts you from liability. It makes no sense. And we know they're not 100% safe and effective too, because every year hundreds of millions of dollars is paid out by the government, not by vaccine companies, from people claiming vaccines hurt them. And they're also not safe by definition, in that you have to inject people with something to create an immune response for them to be effective. So, and the problem with that is some people react negatively to that immune response and it causes damages to them. So, again, I'm not a doctor and I don't want to get into the whole science behind it right now, but this should be something that's completely bipartisan. Everybody should be able to agree on. But like I say, the right tends to lack balls when it comes to this kind of stuff and calling these people out. And the left likes this kind of stuff because it's more authoritarianism, and they like authoritarianism, at least when it benefits them. And when it comes to vaccines, it does, because eventually they'll come up with a program that just helps them out. I guess I'll just leave it at that. And the last thing that I wanted to mention here too is that, so you see, I've seen a lot of people posting this, a few days ago. It was at a Trump rally, and the guy had a Nazi flag, and everyone was reporting it. Oh, here's another example of the racist Trump supporter. And sure enough, it was a hoax. It was a Bernie supporter. And again, this goes to show that if the right is actually so bad, and the left is actually so good, and the left is right about this kind of stuff, then why do they have to make this kind of stuff up? Like, it makes no sense. Like, if you have some terrible hatred for someone and someone asks you, well, why do you have such terrible hatred for them? And the only thing that you can come up is something that's a lie or made up or misleading, then your reason for hating them is completely unjust. And does this kind of stuff ever happen on the left? Like, do we have to make up stuff about Justin Trudeau? No, we don't. We just point out his simple, he likes the basic dictatorship of China. His dad was a commie sympathizer. All this kind of stuff. Like, you don't have to make stuff up about him to make him look bad. But when it comes to Trump and most conservatives, well, guess what? You got to make stuff up to make them look bad. At least the stuff that the left talks about. But anyway, again, I just wanted to point that out because it goes to show where things are at. But like I say, I'm going to leave it there. If you like the video, make sure to hit that like and subscribe. Check out my PayPal. I got linked in the description. I also got an email address for e-transfer. I appreciate any donations, but at the very least, just hit that like and subscribe. And as always, my BitChute channel is not loading here. Okay, there it is. So check me out there if you haven't already. YouTube's going to shadow ban me at some point, so check me out there.